We're always looking for like a life hack, right? We're always looking for the shortcut to change our behaviors. But what study after study has found is that it's not until you really understand what's going on inside your own head that you manage to achieve behavior change. And once we understand that, at that point, we don't need a life hack. We actually recognize the opportunities on our own for the change that we want to create in our lives.
This is Hungry Dogs. I'm James Patterson. This guy is one of the best-selling authors there is. So my guest today is Charles Duhigg. Charles is a Pulitzer Prize winning, that irritates me because I've won no prizes. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and nonfiction author, best known for his incredible bestseller, The Power of Habit. It's a book about why we do what we do, and it spent not weeks, but years on the New York Times bestseller list. He's also the author of Smarter, Faster, Better, and a book called Super Communicators. His work has appeared in the New York Times, the New Yorker, and other major outlets. We talk about what drives the choices we make, why we don't always act in our own best interest. That rings a bell, right? And how creativity plays a role in all of it, including raising our families. Here's Charles Duhigg.
I have to tell you, actually, I'm a huge fan of your work, first of all. But secondly, my wife and I were sort of inspired by the grants that you do to booksellers. And we launched a scholarship to help booksellers who are trying to write their first book to take some time off. So
why would you do that? They're competitors then. They go from being really helpful to us to being in the way of our success.
That's true. That's true.
No, that's great. That's great.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but
we did a thing, go finish your book.
About
6 months ago. That was a fun thing. And that helped, it partly it helps and partly it just draws attention to the fact that there are a lot of writers out there who are having trouble, getting their books done and finished and whatever. And there's not enough money, not enough people are getting published and all that stuff.
Well, and I imagine you found the same thing we did because this is our third year doing it. And we usually get about 2,000 or 2,500 applicants and you have to be a bookseller to apply. And most of the people end up, because we only give away 3 prizes, but most of the people who apply end up sending these thank you notes to say, thank you. Like,
sure.
Applying for this sort of kicked me in the pants to start thinking about it. It's it's wonderful.
One of the things like that, we do something in the holidays for booksellers and put out some money. And almost every person we give to sends a note.
Oh, interesting.
And great. They're like, I got to go to the dentist this year. And for the first year in 4 years, I got to give my parents presents. And, you really feel the need for a lot of booksellers where, the finances are not terrific. At any rate, getting into this whole thing. So you grew up with 10 kids. And so even growing up with 3 sisters, you learn a lot about human behavior. Just watching it and how do you survive? And so what was the effect of that on your books and whatever and things that you've learned about habits?
I have to say when you have 9 siblings, as I did, your parents are either very, very good at raising a lot of kids or they're not very good at raising a lot of kids. Luckily, my parents were
making kids. They're very
good. Exactly. My parents were very good at raising kids. And so my father actually encouraged my writing from a young age and sort of said like, look, you can do anything you want to in this world. And I think having that influence is really, really powerful. And And also made me think about, he was a trial lawyer. And so a lot of the
unfortunate.
A lot of the clients he represented were people who got caught up in the bureaucracy of the world, sort of these systems that they didn't understand and they didn't see and that kind of mauled them up. And I think that a lot of being interested in habits came from this understanding that there are unseen forces, that if you understand them, they can make your life much better. And if you don't understand them, like you don't understand why certain habits pop up in your life, you end up being less successful than you want to be.
Yeah. And less happy and less. I was thinking maybe just to sort of touch on all the books only because I don't want to, drive you crazy or have you, redo things that you've done a lot of times. But in terms of the power of habits, once again, at least the way you wrote about it, a little of it starts with your own dealing with personal habits, things that you wanted to change about diet and exercise and stuff like that. And the notion that the power of habits on our daily lives, good and bad.
And you're exactly right. I mean, basically the question I had, so I was a reporter at the New York Times. I had won all these awards. I'd gone to these fancy schools, and we were about to have our first kid. And my question was, if I'm so good and so smart at this other stuff, why can't I make myself eat more healthy food, right? Like, why can't I force myself to get up and go running in the morning? And so I decided, I'm going to start calling up experts and asking them questions. If for no other reason than just because it would help me, but if I told them I was writing a book, then they would be more likely to talk to me. And so that's kind of what I did. I started this process of self-improvement. And it reminded me of this time that I had been in Iraq as a reporter during the war. And I had met this army captain who had told me that basically the way the military operates is it's a giant habit change machine, right? The reason why the military succeeds is because they can train you. Your natural habit when someone's shooting at you is to run away, but they teach you how to shoot back. Or because you can talk to your spouse every night now from overseas, they have to train you in good communication habits, because otherwise you're going to be distracted.
Yeah. No, I'm huge on habits, and anything that we do when we get into various charities, if it doesn't lead to a habit, I probably am not going to deal with it. If it's a one-time kind of thing and you go like, that would be nice. And that's one of the problems I have with even visiting schools. You go there once, the kids are, yay, this is so great, but you haven't created any kind of a habit.
Yeah.
And maybe every once in a while there'll be a kid and they'll go, oh, that's why I'm a writer now, because I saw you back when I was 11 years old or something.
Right.
You also, in terms of that, of the power of habit, you talk about how small changes in routine can be so powerful too. Yeah. It's interesting. What's the difference between that book and Atomic Habits, and what one came first?
So my book came first.
Okay, all right. So
Power of Habit came out before Atomic Habits. Okay. And I think Atomic Habits is kind of a simplified version of how to apply these rules to your life.
Okay.
My goal with the Power of Habit was really to help people understand the neuroscience behind habit formation, how it exists in our lives. Because the problem is that, like many things, and we've all experienced this, we're always looking for like a life hack, right? We're always looking for the shortcut to change our behaviors. But what study after study has found is that it's not until you really understand what's going on inside your own head that you manage to achieve behavior change. And so my goal with the Power of Habit was to explain to people, here's what's going on inside your head. Every habit is made up of three components: a cue, a routine, and a reward. And if you identify those cues and rewards, you gain power over the behaviors that unfold automatically. And once we understand that, at that point, we don't need a life hack. We actually recognize the opportunities on our own for the change that we want to create in our lives.
Yeah, and obviously a piece of it is people have to be willing, have made the decision to change, to accept change. They want it. They see what's in it for them somehow. Just moving on, you had Smarter, Faster, Better, which is another interesting and helpful way to make your life, to have a better life.
Yeah. And the basic idea there was that most of the habits that I talk about in The Power of Habit are habits that occur in the physical world. And about 40 to 45% of what we do every day is a habit. We think of it as a decision, but it's actually a habit. And a lot of those habits are actually mental habits. Right.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's that low, to be honest with you.
Yeah. For other people, for you, it might be 60%. For some of us who are habit masters, we make it more automatic. But a lot of the habits that occur are these mental habits. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you react by getting angry at them, that's a mental habit, right? When I get frustrated by something and I decide to dump it, or just to hit send rather than rereading that email to see if it makes sense, that's a mental habit. And so I wanted to figure out, what do we know about mental habits? And again, mental habits operate the same way as physical habits. There's a cue, which is like a trigger for an automatic behavior, a routine, which is the behavior itself, and then a reward. Every habit in our life delivers a reward to us. And when it comes to mental habits, what I found was, if you look at the most successful people in success defined very broadly, they have mental habits that push them to think more deeply, particularly when thinking deeply is hard, right? When we're stressed, when time is short, when we're not thinking that hard about what we're doing. Thinking more deeply has always been the killer app throughout human history. And we can build habits to push us to think more deeply, which helps us with innovation. It helps us with focus. It helps us with decision making.
Yeah.
And so that's what Smarter, Faster, Better was about.
Yeah. You say deeper. Another language thing is thinking things out.
Yeah.
Similar thing. I went to graduate school at Vanderbilt, and we had the chancellor, he's a very smart guy. And he wants to build one of the most important universities of the future. And one of the things he does is he thinks things out. And a lot of times somebody will have a pretty good idea, but they haven't really thought it through in terms of, okay, what are the obstacles? What naturally, this step, next step, what's going to can I really get this done? Does it really make sense? There's in Florida, I'm very involved in trying to get kids reading here, and there's a really good program the University of Florida does, and I've been involved with that. And it's really beginning to, Florida now, partly because of this program, they're number one in Black kids reading at grade level, and number one in Latino kids reading at grade level, and they're number 3 in the country now. And a lot of it has to do with that. But it once again, it's just changing habits, and getting people to buy into it.
Absolutely.
But there was a program that the state did it, and it sounded good on paper, where they would every month they would send books into homes where there aren't really books in the houses. The first problem that they had was they were sending books that kids don't want to read. So the kids would get them and go like, you know what, I hate books. and in a lot of the homes, the parents, they don't really have that interest in books anyway. And the kids weren't turned on. And it was expensive.
Yeah.
The University of Florida thing basically involves teachers and the kids, they're in school. It's so much simpler.
Yeah.
But that's once again in terms of thinking deeper or thinking things through, which is huge for people.
Absolutely.
You want to do whatever the heck it is, think it through.
Absolutely.
How do you, what's going to be in your way there?
I think often of Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, which isn't actually about habits, right? He uses that word, but the habit science doesn't really pop up. But one of his big rules is begin with the end in mind, right? Try and figure out like, where do I want to end up, and then work backwards from there. And I think that's exactly what you're saying is thinking long term, thinking about what obstacles are going to pop up, what challenges I'm going to experience, and being prepared for them.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people will go, I don't know what the logic of it is, but they just encourage people to do things, and you just go like, no, that's not going to happen. Right. I'm sorry, you're 280 pounds. You want to be in a ballet. That's hard.
It's not, yeah.
Let's think that through a little bit. Step one, I think you're going to have to, either figure out a way to dance you can dance in your house, or you want, at any rate. So, but I love that area. I love the whole, this thing about helping people to get where they want to go. Help me out by liking and subscribing to Hungry Dogs. You can help a lot. So help, especially if you like the interviews. Your friends will if you like the interviews, your friends will like the interviews, right? Do you have any friends? I don't know. Also, drop me a comment with any ideas you have to make the Hungry Dog interviews better. I'm hungry to hear what you think. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The third book that I came across is Super Communicators, which I love.
Oh, thank you.
And that is a skill. So let me talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's this myth, right, that some people are born great talkers. They're born with the gift of gab, and so it's a talent. It's not a skill. But what's interesting is if you talk to those people who are very good at communication, what they will inevitably tell you is that when they were younger, they were bad at communication. They'll say things like, when I was in high school, I had trouble making friends. And so I had to really study how kids talk to each other, or my parents got divorced and I had to be the peacemaker between them. And this is what we know. We know that communication is just a set of skills. It's very simple skills. It's skills that anyone can learn, anyone can practice, anyone can become a super communicator. And But on the other hand, if we think of communication as something that's not a skill, if it's something we don't need to practice, something that should just either happen naturally or not, then we're putting ourselves at a real disadvantage, because those people who do understand that it's a skill will build that muscle and they'll be better at communicating. And the book is kind of an invitation for everyone to join them. I think in the book
you talk also about when you were an editor at the Times and New York Times, and feeling that you would kind of drop the ball with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you weren't listening, and maybe not listening at home with your family as well.
Well, and I think everyone's experienced this, right? Like, you come home from a long day of work and you start complaining about your day, and your spouse says, "Oh, you know what you ought to do? Here's the solution." And the thing is, you don't want a solution. You just want someone to listen to you complain. Right. And then, so you get upset that they're trying to solve your problem. And this gets to the core sort of framework of what we know about communication, which is that there are different kinds of communication, and they tend to fall into one of three buckets. There's this practical form of communication, an emotional form of communication, and a social form of communication. And when two people are having different types of conversations at the same time, that's when they fail to hear each other and they don't feel connected to each other. So it's as simple as understanding what kind of conversation is going on and then matching someone or inviting them to match you.
You also, I'm not sure if it's in the book or not, but I think it is, the notion that inability to communicate, which is sort of rampant right now in this country for various reasons, people are polarized and whatever, and that is one of the things that's leading to a lot of loneliness and unhappiness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people they're not practicing the skill set at all.
It's interesting because if you look at how the human brain has evolved, communication is humans' superpower, right? It is the thing that sets us apart from all the other species. And our brains have evolved to crave communication and connection. We actually experience a physical reward sensation when we have a good conversation with another person. That feeling that you get where you feel great afterwards, that's actually your brain releasing dopamine and other endorphins to try and make you feel good because you did this, because our brain wants to encourage us to connect. It wants us to encourage to talk to people. We are a pro-social species, and that pro-sociality has evolved within our brains. And you're exactly right. So when people cut themselves off, when they're not having conversations, when they don't feel connected to others, what happens is the neural signature of depression, because we're missing that reward sensation and we crave it.
Yeah. You might be shortchanging animals and birds, though, because
that's true.
All of a sudden, here's 1,000 seagulls all flying the same way together. There's some communication going on there sometimes. Squirrels don't seem to communicate with one another, but some of these dolphins and they seem to somehow be figuring out ways to kind of stick together and protect one another.
We have a very dumb dog at home, and my wife insists that the dog can communicate with us. And so I think you're exactly right. There are forms of communication, but humans have really gotten it to a fine point.
Or we're getting worse at it, actually, I think, in the last couple of years. And I think we are, to some extent. The more we silo ourselves, the less communication. Yes. I don't know that we're getting better at it. Theoretically, we should. It almost feels like we're getting worse at it because we're just cutting off. We're not listening at all. It's like we have our minds made up. Our minds aren't open. Not anyway, but too many people. It's bizarre.
Well, it's interesting. I have a piece in the New Yorker magazine this week about what the Democrats ought to be learning from MAGA. The MAGA And what's interesting is I spent a long time talking to people in the MAGA movement, MAGA strategists. Ralph Reed, who you might remember, used to be the head of the Christian Coalition, and now he runs a group called Faith and Family Coalition. What's interesting is that if you look at what's happening on the right, there's a lot of community building going on. And there's less on the left. The left has gotten very good at protests and at marches, but not as good at durable community building. The right isn't great at marches, but they've got a lot of durable community building. And so I think one of the things that we all need to learn, whether you're left or right, whether you're MAGA or anti-Trump, as Americans, we need to learn how to build communities with our neighbors.
Yeah.
And that means talking to people who you might disagree with on 5% of stuff, but that's okay.
50%. It's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, you're married. Come on.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding. one of the things you write about a bit is also the stories, which to me are crucial. You talk about communication, and for me, and I ran a big company, I wasn't a great communicator until I learned to give speeches with stories. And all through, you talk about stories in these books and ways to get people to understand what you're talking about and listen. And I mean, it really is the key. But for me, and when I wrote the autobiography, I don't even know why I wrote it, except it was COVID, and I was stuck in the house, and I started writing down stories, not the usual kind of, I was born in this town, blah 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 blah. Who cares? It was just story after story after story. And when I go out on the road, if I'm, I just tell stories, and they're engaging, and people listen and they laugh or whatever the heck it is. But just talk a little bit about that stories. And you said that you said for the rest of your life, you'd never be able to figure out why some work and why they don't,
Or it's a question I want to try and answer for the rest of my life. And actually, I'll ask you a question, because I think of you as a natural, as someone who's a very good storyteller, that you are, your DNA is at this point storytelling. And I'm interested to hear that you said that it wasn't something you were good at initially. How did you learn to become a storyteller? Like, what was that process to understand the value of stories and how to do it?
I think a part of it was I think I wasn't good at verbalizing, but as a little kid, we lived out in the country for a long time. There were no kids around. And when I was real little, I used to go into the woods and just tell myself stories. After story after story. I think I got my imagination. I was fairly sophisticated as a storyteller when I was about 7 years old, much to my parents' dismay. So I think I had that. And then out in life, I wouldn't verbalize those, because a lot of times, you start verbalizing fantasy stories and people kind of look at you like, what? What's wrong with you, dude? But eventually I realized, and especially if I wanted to write, I need to figure out how to tell stories. And when I was at J. Walter Thompson, the first year people, I would always go in and shoot the breeze with them and say, look, I'm going to tell you how to make $1 million a year in advertising. It's relatively simple, and it has to do with stories. And I said, somebody came up and they handed me a cream pie. And I stood there with this cream pie in my hand, And then I called somebody up, and they stood next to me, one from the audience, and I'm holding this cream pie and looking at them and I gave them the cream pie. I said, hit me. And they hit me in the face with the cream pie. And I said, this is all there is in terms of this communication to big audiences. And you got to hit them in the face with the cream pie, meaning they got to pay attention. If you don't get their attention, nothing happens. And then while you have their attention, you have to say something smart and motivating. That's it. There's nothing but that. No cream pie, no communication. And similar with storytelling. I mean, for a lot of people, if you don't get them relatively quickly, you look at, various articles in the opinion, like New Yorker, you read the headline, and you either, half the people or more than that are gone just on the headline.
I think that's exactly
and it
right.
could be another headline you could double. And, they test a lot of ads, and you'll get certain ads and they score like a 2, and you get certain ads, they score like a 70. Because, and that, I mean, that's a massive difference in terms of the number of people. But it's that cream pie thing. Did you say something that got people's attention so that they want to read your piece?
Absolutely.
And then the next thing is, does the piece hold them?
Yes, exactly. And you're exactly right. I try and jam pack my books with stories, with anecdotes, with characters. I want people to sit down. I want them to be desperate to finish this chapter, to say, like, it's late, I should go to bed, but I just can't put this book down. It's just too good. I got to find out what happens next. And I think you're exactly right. And one of the things that you're saying that I think really resonates with me is part of storytelling is understanding the psychology of your audience and thinking about your audience, right? You know that when you're standing in front of this room of new JWT employees, that if somebody hits you with a cream pie, it's going to be something that they talk about for weeks, right? Whereas if you're in front of a clown audience and someone hits you with a pie, they're going to be like, oh, another pie in the face. We don't. And I think that an important part of writing, particularly writing stories, is understanding where your audience is emotionally at that moment, where they are interest-wise at that moment. It's about getting inside their head and understanding, here's the catnip I can put in front of you that's going to force you to learn how your habits work. Even if you get bored, even if you're tired, you want to stop reading, I'm going to trick you into learning the science because the stories around it are going to be so fascinating.
Yeah. And you have to make a decision as a writer, an artist, or whatever. Do you want a lot of people to read your story?
That's true. That's
or are you
true.
very happy with a very small audience that, because I want to do it my way, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Or I want to do this painting, and I know what I'm doing, and I know nobody's going to like it, and I don't care. but that's a decision you have to make.
Absolutely. And I think you and I are similar, although in different scale, that we both want people to read our work. I mean, honestly, writing without having a reader it feels very hollow. And I haven't sold even a fraction as many books as you have, but I have to assume that you also care about this reader existing.
Yeah, sure.
And in many ways, I think that the beauty of writing is when it gets read, right? A book doesn't really exist until someone picks it up and starts looking at the words. And at that moment, it becomes a real living thing in their hands.
Yeah, I mean, that's what drives it for me, and a whole lot of different kinds of stories too. Some nonfiction and some comedic. All the kids' books that I do are comedic.
Yeah,
interesting because that's so different than Alice Cross, who isn't that hilarious. Because it's just not appropriate. But the kids' books are almost all of them are humorous. iFunny. It's about a kid who, and I think there are 4 books in the series. He wants to be a comedian, so he studies every comedian there is, and then he starts writing his own stuff. And part of the thing you find out in the second or third chapter that he's in a wheelchair, so he can never be a stand-up comedian, and he'll make jokes about that as well. And I think it's also useful for people who have had bumps in the road and whatever to see humor as something that can be helpful to them.
Absolutely, and those bumps in the road. I mean, humans are a storytelling species, right? It's you just look at what has been handed down from year to year, and you look at the Bible. The Bible is nothing but stories, right? It's not just pronouncements about how thou shalt and shalt not act. It's a bunch of stories. And it's stories because not only do the stories hook you and they grab you and pull you along, it's stories because we remember ideas better when they are embedded in a story.
Yes.
And you're exactly right. For the hard times that we have, when we can tell ourselves a story about ourselves, when we can say, look, I wasn't a victim in that situation. I was someone who had agency and I did what was right and I feel proud of myself. And when we tell ourselves stories, we change how we see ourselves and see the world. And that's a really powerful skill.
Well, yeah, and that thing about language or whatever, and as you said, the cream pie, which, I mean, obviously I want all these kids to be great at it. Right. Because if they're great, we're great, So you want them in that habit of where they can look at the stuff and just go, nobody's going to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
So it fails the first test. There's that book, Let Them, out there. And she's had thousands of people send her photographs where they've had tattoos, let them on their arm, which is, here's that powerful thought, which is basically, don't let people drive you crazy. They're going to think what they want to think, and you don't even have a right to stop them from thinking what they want to think.
Right.
Let them.
Yeah.
Don't, and that's a powerful thought for a lot of people, but they'll literally tattoo it to remind themselves to create a habit.
And I'm a huge Mel Robbins fan, the author of Let Them. I think she's a wonderful person. Every time I've spent time with her, I felt like I've learned something. And I think what's interesting is if you were to ask all those people who had the tattoos, tell me about your tattoo, they would tell you a story. Right. The tattoo is an idea. It's an idea about building a habit. But for every person who goes and gets a tattoo, there's a story about why they got that inscribed on their body.
Or what it meant to them. Because now my mother-in-law doesn't bother me anymore.
Exactly.
She's still doing her thing, but I don't care.
Exactly. Yes. Or it was a tough moment in my life, and this is how I symbolized to myself that I was getting out of it. And And I think that's really powerful when you can combine powerful ideas with stories that people want to read and remember. That is when you've hit the magic combination.
Yeah.
And that's when you start changing people's lives.
Yeah. Well, that's what, and so with some of my stuff, I just think people need escape. They need to be able to get away for an hour. I've got to stop. I have to stop this for an hour. I'm going to watch TV for an hour, or whatever the heck it is, or I'm going to, hopefully they don't sit there and just turn on the television until they go to sleep and, whatever. But they need to get away. And that's a legitimate thing. I mean, you just have to stop the craziness, stop the insanity, stop the pain.
I'm a big believer. And I say this as someone who is a newspaper reporter for a long time and is now a reporter for the New Yorker and writing nonfiction books. I limit my news consumption to an hour a day. Because first of all, you don't need more than that, right? Like 30 years ago, people would just read the newspaper in the morning. That's all the news they needed. You'll get by just fine.
And you might watch the 6 to 6:30 thing.
Sure.
With Walter Cronkite or whatever the heck it is.
Right. But the problem is that when you're reading it all the time, when you're very close to what's happening, it colors everything. It changes everything. And you're right. We need this escape. I read for at least an hour every night before I fall asleep. And the stuff I read, sometimes I read like cheesy science fiction. Sometimes I read, Booker Prize winners, but like I get drawn into another world. Sometimes I read James Patterson books, to be honest, and I get drawn into another world, and it's it helps me sleep. It helps me reset. It helps me remember the perspective that craziness might be happening around me, but I'm okay right now. And I
think it's probably very useful to go into sleep in have a better mindset when you go to sleep. If you go and you're already kind of frazzled, I think that's when we have our bad nights and we're up at 2 and we're up at 4 and why would that dream where whatever, somebody broke into my house and with masks on, et cetera, whatever. Okay. Anything we didn't cover here?
Well, can I ask you another question?
Sure, yeah, of course, 100%.
What do you read? Like, what's your when you have all the time in the world and you say like, I just want to.
I was for many, many years like 4 or 5 books a week person. Wow. I don't know how, but I would just now I'm more of a 1 to 2 book a week person.
Okay. That's still a lot.
There are X number of magazines. I get the New Yorker, I get the Week, which pretty cool magazine because what they do is whatever the news topic is, they'll take excerpts from maybe 4 or 5 different newspapers and magazines. Here's the left, here's the right, here's what they said in France, which is kind of cool. And I find that engaging. And then I'm all over the lot with. I'll read occasionally a kid's book. I'm actually writing a romantasy.
Oh, really?
I read a couple. Yaros and a few others, and I went. These are fantasies. I could do this, and I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it. It's actually the project that I'm most involved in right now in terms of just loving doing the writing on it.
That's really
it's all fantasy. It's a new challenge. I keep learning things about, and I don't want to know too much about I've only read a couple, so I don't want to know too much about the category, what you're supposed to do. I don't want to do that. When I wrote the first mystery way back, like 26 or whatever, Thomas Behrman number, I had probably read about 10 mysteries. So I didn't know. And that's good, I think, because then you're bringing, you have a vague knowledge of it, but you're bringing your own, some freshness to it.
And there's a lot of power in the novice mindset, right? And in the naive mindset. You don't know what you're going to do wrong. You don't know how the odds are stacked against you. And so you just go and you write the thing that you believe in, the thing that you want to write, the thing that you wish that you could read.
My thing about hiring has always been, I want to hire from 2 talent pools. One are kids who don't know any better. And I don't care, mistake, great. Mistake, I don't care, great. They might not even be mistakes. But, we can't use it, wow. And then older people who, for whatever reason, either they chose I didn't want to do it anymore, or someone chose and said we're getting rid of everybody over 60, but they got it and they're really good. What I never want is the middle.
Yeah.
I want the young Turks, and I want the people who have done it at a pretty good level, not the people that are, for whatever reason, they're probably in the wrong business. But that was always, but I like, and also find kids are stimulating because they're going to challenge it, especially now. I mean, I don't think who cares what you think?
Right.
I do.
Right. That's absolutely true. And I think also seeking out those challenges is a huge part of success. Not being so defensive that when someone challenges your ideas, your instinct is to push back, but rather to say, tell me more. Tell me why you think I'm wrong.
The other book that I'm doing, or another book I'm doing is, and it's almost finished, is with Mr. Beast.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And that's another one where it's like, I went and talked to him. He is a very insightful young man. He's 27. And, he's very mature in a lot of ways. He's probably in his 40s in terms of a lot of what he's figured out. He does figure stuff out very well. He's very, very smart about what he does. And we talked for about 4 hours, and we said, yeah, let's do this novel. It'd be cool. And I've learned a lot just working with him.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of looking at things, and it's cool. It's fun. It's a good challenge that I wanted. Some challenge, I go, I don't really want to do that,
Right. Well, if you ever want to do a book together, let me know. I'd be enthusiastic for it. It'd be a lot of fun.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry I was late, but
no worries.
Better late, whatever. That is not a habit for me.
No, I understand.
Not in our house.
Life gets crazy, and it is such an honor to talk with you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Hungry Dogs. Help me out by liking and subscribing to the show. We want to get these interviews out to as many people as we can. You can help a lot. If you like the interviews, your friends will like the interviews. So help. Also, drop me a comment with any ideas you have to make the Hungry Dog interviews better. I'm hungry to hear what you think. I love new ideas. Thank you.